What do you think about what Putin revealed? Do you think this will have any political effect for America moving forwards?
Connection established.
This week's gold and silver specials at Miles Franklin are the 1 ounce silver Philharmonics, only $3.15 over spot. Also, the beautiful $10 gold Liberties, only $99 over melt. And last but not least, the $20 gold Liberties, $144 over melt. Seriously, the largest inventory I've ever seen. Honored to be able to give you guys this opportunity. Slayer at milesfranklin.com. Hit me up. Now let's get to the video. Welcome back, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are here with another episode. We have the legendary Andy Schechtman with us from Miles Franklin. He's the CEO, and I'm sure you've heard of us. We're the company that filled that $55 million order. I just got to throw that out there sometimes because that's just incredible. I think the biggest sale ever, filled that order in 2 days. It just kind of shows the type of guy he is and the connections he has. I dug up some questions I want to ask Andy. I want to prepare this time instead of just going off the top. I feel that would be more interesting, especially the questions that I prepared for him. I think you guys will enjoy. Andy, what's up? How you been doing? Is there anything you wanted to mention beforehand that's going on?
No, man, good to be back. I always look forward to our conversations, even if they're just off the top of the head.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's the best way to have a conversation, one that's not planned or prompted. And you and I don't discuss anything we talk about before ever. So it's good to be here, buddy. And I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. I just got to say about that. You filled that order in 2 days, correct?
It was 2 or 3 days before a July 4th holiday. And that was the first one. We had the good fortune of doing two orders of $50 million or more, both of them last year. And I never thought that I would ever have that type of an order, but I guess it's emblematic of there being an awakening and I don't want to say more sophisticated. Just because you have more money doesn't mean you're more sophisticated, but generally, it might mean that you're more financially sophisticated or literate or aware. And yes, we were able to, the first one where you and I met, we were able to fill it over 2.5 days before the July 4th holiday, which to me was something that was, it was kind of remarkable. But look, I've been doing this for 34 years. And so I'm not married to just one source of product.
Right.
I know just about everyone in the industry. And if you maintain a good relationship, and I think that's really one of my strong points is friendship and relationship and honor and paying quickly and doing as I say. And those are the things I try and do in my business, whether it be with clients or with mints or mines or refiners or large wholesale dealers around the world. And it worked out well and made a couple of phone calls. And, it's one thing to call people and tell them that, could you do this? It's another thing to say, go ahead and do it. And, it's something I'm very proud of and excited to say that, yes, it's true. Now that you work with me, it's true. And, it's all about relationships, man, and doing the right thing and not burning any bridges. And that's something we've been fortunate to accomplish in the last 34 years.
I think one of the most important things about that a lot of people don't think about is that someone was willing to trust you with that much money. I
didn't
highly
even, and in both cases, wires were sent without even an invoice or an email. In both cases, I received a phone call from my operations. You got a $50 million wire. And the second one was, I can't even believe it, but there's now a $52 million wire in our account. And in both cases, these people trusted us with it without even getting confirmation. And we sent them wire instructions, but, typically you would figure, well, you want some sort of a statement saying upon receipt, we'll do this. But I guess that's kind of what I mean about being, well, and I don't even know if that's really financially literate. It's trusting for sure, but I guess maybe they did their due diligence on us. And believe me, when you start receiving amounts like that, I mean, even my bank I had to deal with because in order then to pay the suppliers. And I didn't have $50 million worth of what she wanted laying around. Uh, I had to go to the bank and increase my outbound wire limit
Wow.
immediately because I'm like, listen, I got to pay right now, or these people are going to come after my firstborn. That's the thing. You can't tell someone to commit for you, even if you have the money, and then not pay at that kind of a level. I mean, it's bad. So I didn't even think about that. And I'm like, oh gosh, we only have a, $3, $4, $5 million limit to send out to one entity per day. That's a problem. So I had to scramble, to say the least, not only to find the product, but also to up our outbound wire limit in order to get this done. And all of this before the July 4th holiday, that first one, it was a trip for sure.
That is when I first heard about you, obviously. That is such an interesting situation that I feel not enough people talk about. Like there's so many variables to that, like what you just mentioned. That's so interesting. It was like 900,000 eagles over, which I think is the most impressive, over 100,000 ounces of constitutional silver. That itself, 100,000 ounces of junk silver. Like I honestly try to think, I don't know anyone else in the world that could pull that off. I mean, I'm sure you do, but like who could pull off that type of order?
Most
Like
of us never even think about pulling like something like that off.
that is insane.
We did over 900 million in sales last year, which was a massive year for us. And if you put that in context with what $50 million means, it's a big percentage of it. So,
Wow.
was talking to guys in this industry who said they've never seen an order that large, but I think you'll be getting this is people who've been doing this for 4 decades. But I think that you'll see more orders like this. The reason you don't see it is that typically, that strata of money is being managed by money managers, because the way these companies make money is by retaining them under management. They make a percentage of the money under that umbrella. So to say, well, just go ahead and throw 50 million over there at physical gold, that's coming out from under management, and they lose that. And do the math, at 1%, that's pretty significant. Even if they're getting a 0.5% management fee, pretty significant. So, it's hard for those people to cross over and take the initiative to to look out for their clients, either as brokers or as the clients themselves, pull the money out from management and say, this is my money, this is what I want to do, and I don't need a manager to give me permission, because in my soul and in my heart, I know this is what I want to do. Not enough people take accountability for their finances. They take accountability for every action they've ever had since they were little kids, and they work their ass off for years and years and years and years to make money, and then they just openly allow someone to manage it for them. And in some cases it works out fine, but I guess I find it kind of crazy that there isn't more due diligence and personal attention and accountability for people's finances. So yeah, in both of these cases, both of the people who did this, well, they certainly took accountability for their own actions.
So obviously, you saw the Putin interview. We were talking about it briefly. I got tons of people emailing me, texting me, saying that what Putin was saying is exactly what Andy Schechtman has been preaching, and that Andy was right this whole time. And finally, people are starting to awaken to what you've been exposing, which I found out was really interesting. Like I got 2 or 3 texts, emails, everyone's mentioning your name because the latter half, I think it's like an hour and 27 minutes in is when they start talking about that, or hour and 17 minutes in. What do you think about what Putin revealed? Do you think this will have any political effect for America moving forwards?
Look, I mean, I think what he was basically saying is that as for a world order based on rules, um, he doesn't think that there are such rules, that they are more along the lines of a Western set of rules that don't apply to them. I mean, and again, I say this from the perception, I think, of much of the world, where we can go into Iraq, as an example, 20 years ago, sanction 14 of their banks still. We're occupying their country 2 decades after we took it over and supposedly installed a new regime. We toppled and destroyed their country in search of weapons of mass destruction that we didn't find. Sorry. And there's no consequences for that. And here we are still holding all of their oil revenue. They can't even direct what they can do with their own oil revenue. They asked for $1 billion last year and we wouldn't give it to them. So they formally applied to BRICS. They're kicking out the coalition forces. They publicly said that. They've made trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business, they'll throw you in jail if you trade in dollars, and they'll take your business. And they just got rid of all of these. All green bills are out of the banks in Iraq as of January 1. So when you talk about a hypocritical system, when you talk about a system, at least from the rest of the world's opinion, or much of the Southern Hemisphere, the rules-based order is one that is certainly slanted in terms of the West's short-term interests, or long-term interests, depending upon how you look at it. But yeah, I mean, I think that he talked about things that you don't have to be an economist or even particularly astute to see what's happening. And when he says, do people in your country even know why the dollar is the dollar and how you're cutting off your own hand by weaponizing it? Look, it's one thing to sanction, and that's bad enough, especially when they look at the way we go about our business and through coercion and bombing and all of the things that we do to maintain our dominance and our hegemony. No matter what the cause is, there's always someone who looks at something differently. Their viewpoint may be different than ours, and as important of a cause as we believe something may be, there's always some other entity who feels the opposite. But there will be ramifications when you not just sanction, like we did with Iran, their funds and stop interest payments and not allow them to access it, but we did just give it back, or a good portion of it. In the case of Russia, they want to confiscate 300 billion in Russian forex FX reserves and use it to fund the Ukrainian war, which is just insane. There will be no one that will ever trust us again as the world reserve currency. You can't do that. And that's exactly what he is saying. Now, he didn't even mention the fact that we signed an executive order to go green. That would be more appropriate coming from Saudi Arabia. But the bottom line is that, yeah, I think indeed what he said is very logical, that, you can't go around the world using the heavy hand. And if you look at what is making, at least outwardly appearing to me, making this BRICS coalition grow, where 35 more countries have formally applied, another 20 have expressed interest, is the cooperative manner. None of these countries in BRICS have any obligation to one another. They are all there cooperative in nature, and they want to do things in a mutually beneficial, cooperative manner. And that's the thing, is that, that's what I think he is saying, is that the cooperation is gone. It's all about coercion, and it's in many of the world's eyes, it is hypocritical. And the backlash that is coming as a result of it, I think, is only gaining in momentum. And you can see that by the constant de-dollarization and the constant trade settlement that's being done in other currencies in these BRICS nations countries, where 20% of all oil sales was done in other currencies last year. It's just the beginning as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I thought it was also interesting that he mentioned he hasn't talked to Joe Biden in years. And even on that note, just listening to him speak compared to our president, just the way they speak is very telling. And I wonder, in the second part of that question that I asked, I wonder how this will affect our, like, do you think enough people watched it to where maybe something clicked, or maybe it will affect the election, or like, do you think this will have any ripple effect, or people will kind of just take it and leave it?
I hope so, because, as he said, the use of the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes that this country will ever make. And I wish that it would have been a free, prime time aired program. But, you got to pay that to join Tucker Carlson's channel, which I did, and I think it's great money well spent. I mean, I enjoyed the conversation very much, and I found it very illuminating. And you know, he certainly doesn't come across the way that he's portrayed. Now, again, you know, he's a great speaker, at least in terms of his historical recognition and his historical acumen. He's very smart. It's a very small sample size, but he certainly did not come across the way that he was portrayed. But no, I
Right.
don't think enough people will understand it or see it to make a difference. That's the sad part of it is that the media, the Western media, does such a poor job of really explaining what's happening. Journalistic integrity and the investigative journalism seems to be dead. And so, yeah, you know, unfortunately, I don't think enough people will have watched that to make a massive difference. But little by little, hopefully it does. And you know, send it out to people. Let people see it. You can forward it, and I think I forwarded it to you, and you were able to watch it. So if you can forward it, if you have a link, you can send it to a friend and build the base. Let people understand. Let people see.
Yeah.
You know, he might not be the boogeyman that he appears to be
Right.
when you listen to him speak. And again, I'm not a
Right.
Putin bobo. I'm not a Putin apologist. I just think that there are two sides to every story. And, you know, ask the people in other countries how they feel about the United States, which is supposedly the beacon of freedom and the greatest country in the world. And I
Right.
think you'd get varying opinions. So if you don't understand the opposite viewpoint, if you don't understand what other people are saying, not only do you never grow, you just end up, I think, learning more and more about less and less till you know everything about nothing. And you have to have
Mm.
a broader understanding of the way the world, or even if you go to, it's like going to court for your life and you hire an attorney who says, nah, we don't need to understand what the plaintiff's argument is. I just want to hear yours.
Good
So, you know,
point.
if that's the case, you're probably going to go away. And so the same thing is true here. To only listen to our side of things is a mistake. And to listen to what he had to say with an open mind isn't. You know, what you come away with after that is you're up to you. But yeah, I think it's big, but not big enough because it didn't get enough attention mainstream. In
Wow.
fact, the mainstream and you know, Hillary Clinton, you know, they called Tucker all sorts of names, and he's a fool and he's a tool, a puppet for Putin, and this and that. You know, yeah, I think they all have some skeletons in their closets that you could say the same thing about.
Yeah. I like the way he handled it as well. That's so interesting. I want to talk a little bit about the border crisis. I've been seeing a lot of videos. There's actually a channel, he's an independent journalist, Channel 5, Andrew Callahan. It's just a guy, he goes around. It used to be called All Gas No Breaks, but he filmed a video yesterday. He actually went over to Mexico and followed people crossing the border, like with them. Like he befriended some of them and just documented and showed the reality of it, and just thousands of people. And he actually got arrested for doing it because he has this camera, you know, he has him and his nice camera, and I guess they were watching him. And then he actually talked about what it was like in, for people that do get caught, what it was like in the not jail, but I can't think of the word, the holding.
Processing, whatever it
Yeah,
may be.
yeah, but it was very interesting. He said there's people from all over the world. It's you know, all over for different reasons, but that, just watching that was very interesting. They had to cross this river. I wonder what would happen if Trump were to win. Do you think he could fix it? Like, do you think this is fixable?
He'd have to start deporting people. You know, we have over 12 million people have entered this country illegally and from all over the world, as you say. And I was watching Fox News this morning, and they were talking about how the largest number of people coming across right now are Chinese nationals. And if you look at these people, they're wearing nice clothes and carrying a Toomey suitcase. They didn't walk from Central America. Who the hell is flying these people from all around the world, including the Middle East, and China, to the United States or to Mexico to cross the border? How are they getting here? And I find it to be very disturbing. And if 0.2% of these people have bad intentions, look at the chaos that three idiots did at the Kansas City Chiefs parade yesterday. Well, if 0.2% of 12 million people is 24,000 people, or 1% of these people who have bad intentions, then being 120,000 people, what kind of chaos could be coordinated and done? If you got Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, saying there will be, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, there will be problems. You have 200 or 300 sheriffs from the United States that just met with the FBI, and the sheriff from a small town in Ohio went on YouTube and talked about this and said exactly that, president won't meet with the sheriffs. And so we met with the FBI, and they said that there hasn't been red flags like this since before 9/11. And that's a matter of if, not a matter if, but when there will be some sort of an event. God help us if he doesn't, I mean, what is the government supposed to do but to protect the borders and to protect the country? And, everyone in the United States, their roots are from another part of this world, but everyone, most everyone came here the right way. And to come in undocumented at a time when the United States is very polarizing, and there are obviously people here with intent that isn't really American. Yeah, what could happen? What will happen? When you hear the FBI say it's gonna happen, why do people not think that's really serious? Or why is there not a greater concern? And yet Democrats want to blame the Republicans for not signing the bill because they slip all sorts of crap into the bill that doesn't belong there. How about, why has the border been open all of this time? How are we letting these people in? How are they not vetted? I spent a few hours at a conference in Las Vegas a few months ago with a Border Patrol agent from Texas, and the stories he told me were ridiculous. And I don't know at this point how you truly fix it, but when you got people who come to this country who will beat up police officers in Manhattan in broad daylight, or grab someone in broad daylight in New York City and drag a 60-year-old woman behind a scooter, these kinds of things, this isn't the country that we grew up in. And all of a sudden, if we don't do something to address it, there's going to be very big problems. Because go try and do this in any other country. Go try and do this in China, see what happens, or Korea, or go to another country and just walk across their border and claim asylum and see what happens. And, who's going to pay for the schooling and the healthcare and the education? And, think about it. When you send a massive army like World War II, how many people do we send? A few 100,000? That's a huge army. I don't know, several 100,000. How about 12 million? Right now, really? So this is a problem, and I think we're getting very late in the hour to be able to rectify it. But yeah, you would have to immediately close the border. You would have to immediately round people up and determine if they should stay or not. And I don't know how you do that, but let's just hope that they do, because I think it's a far bigger problem than people give it credit for.
I want to revert back to silver for a second. What are the most common mistakes you've seen with silver stackers over the years? And I'll share my thoughts on this after. Like, what is the most common mistake?
Look, I think the common mistake that you would see is natural. When you go through several years of a structural supply deficit in silver, we've talked about this before, 200 million ounces short. It doesn't even take into account the military industrial complex, which you and I have talked about a lot. I had a gentleman in Vancouver come up to me who works on the Patriot missile, said, yes, there is that amount of silver in it. And that's just one form of munitions. How about all the missiles? And how about all the high-tech weaponry? And there's a big deficit, and people understand that. It's needed in solar panels. It's needed in green and digital technology. It's experienced some monetary renaissance. And you have all of these silver speculators who are watching the counterintuitive nature of the metal and becoming, or the pricing of the metal, and becoming more and more frustrated. And many have capitulated. That's the biggest mistake, because the big rise that everyone expects that attracted them in the first place, to me, is getting much closer when you realize that there are people capitulating. That's exactly what they want to see. And at the same time, you have a country like India who, imports 400 million ounces of silver rather, off of places like the COMEX over the last 2 years. It's twice as much as we see on COMEX, where over the last week, 5.5 million silver ounces were delivered off of COMEX. Little by little, they are draining, where 350 million ounces have come off of COMEX in the last 2.5 years. And so the big money is using the price, suppression of price, and the emotions, the emotions that get in the way of logical thinking in this respect to drain the systems. And yeah, I think that the biggest mistake people could make is buying silver to become wealthy,
Mm.
because it increases the frustration when you see things that are counterintuitive the way they are. When you buy it as wealth and take a step back and look at the big picture, the historical context, the need for silver, which is strategic, not just industrial, time is on your side, hopefully, if you're young enough to realize that, yeah, it's just a matter of time.
All right, good to have you back. It looks like you froze, your connection got lost. But anyways, do you think silver's price will be set free anytime soon? And what is the time frame?
Yeah, I'd like to set myself free first. I mean, we've had workers in our house now for 2 months, literally, all sorts of mishaps and construction and stuff. And I think someone unplugged the Wi-Fi. I apologize about that. Yeah, look, I do. And I think there are a couple things that I just wanted to mention. I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but recently we talked a little bit about how the pricing on the Shanghai Gold Exchange versus what we see on COMEX and the LBMA is about $2.90 higher per ounce for silver in Shanghai than in the West. This is arbitrage. They're slowly turning up the heat. I know that the closing price on the 27th of December, the last day of trading day of the year, was 24.31 on the CME and 26.50 on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It's gone even higher. If the Shanghai Gold Exchange is pricing metal much higher than the West, that's a problem, right? They also just said that they want to start warehousing LBMA metal in Chinese warehouses. Now, how can they do that? I'll tell you how they can do that. How many people, even someone like you, who's, I hope you know this, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, because they're very quiet about it. How many people know that the Chinese bought the LBMA a few years ago and own the LBMA? So the fact that they are now going to warehouse metal traded on the LBMA, they're going to issue contracts on the LBMA off of the Shanghai Exchange, where the metal is 10, 12, 15% higher than it is in the West. I think we can see why 400 million ounces have been taken off of COMEX and the LBMA inventories in the last 3 years. We can see why India is importing as much as they are. They are using the suppression of the Western market and getting to a point right now, as they slowly turn up the heat, where maybe they've bled dry as much as they possibly can. And now they have to start to turn up the heat a little bit, whether it be by arbitrage or starting to warehouse the LBMA metals in Hong Kong. These are things that I do believe will all be in the favor of silver. And that's why those that are looking to own it simply to profit are making a mistake. And this is a gradual process that when it snaps, they'll be like, oh my God, that was the greatest profit ever. But in the meantime, they're going to lose their mind. If you own it as wealth and understand exactly what is happening and that there is that potential for it to really take off, it makes it a whole lot easier. But if you buy it simply to get wealthy, you better have proper time frame, and you better understand that, yeah, you probably have a decent chance of doing well in it, but it will be counterintuitive. It won't be easy. And for a lot of people, they don't have what it takes to hang on, and they capitulate. And that's, to me, as I was saying earlier, when you see structural deficits the way we have been for years, when you see such bullish, silver bullish friendly news, and it goes the other way, you get people that get frustrated and capitulate. And these are the people that bought it for a reason, for this moonshot reason. And when they're the ones finally letting go, it tells me from a contrarian viewpoint that we're getting closer to that moment, as does the actions of what's happening on the Shanghai Metals Exchange and the LBMA and the importing by India. And all of these things tell me we're getting that much closer. But when it happens, is anyone's guess. Mathematically and logically, it will happen. Don't know when, don't know how, but yeah, I think we're on our way to much higher prices and maybe substantially so. What triggers it? How does it fast does it go? When does it happen? Those are all the what ifs, but I think there's a greater chance of the what ifs happening than the what if not.
Yeah, I like last week you mentioned it's like China is buying the LBMA and doing all this is cutting down a tree with a butter knife, that
Yeah.
logarithmic decay. I really liked that. But my opinion goes hand in hand with yours. And also I think a lot of stackers have too much emotional involvement in, so they need that validation and confirmation that it can go up. But a true silver stacker doesn't need that because you already know its true value. And then even validating its price going up is still comparing it to dollar terms, which is looking at it backwards. So I feel like, and I always tell people this, invest with your head, not your heart. And that's why like those trading bots are so accurate because there's no emotional attachment there. I really try to push people to the perspective that no matter who says that coin is worth what is irrelevant, because the coin's price isn't the price tag. The coin's price is the silver inside of it. So once people, I
It's
think,
about the number of ounces. That's right. I
yeah,
agree.
exactly.
In the right
Yeah.
form, though.
I also wanted to ask one last thing. The gold to silver ratio is still sitting probably what, like 90 to 1 around there. What do you think about silver compared to gold? Silver is extremely undervalued compared to gold, or you could even phrase gold is overvalued, not in dollar terms, but overvalued compared to silver. So, what do you think is the better buy right now? Obviously, silver would be, but what do you think about people still purchasing gold?
If I had only one trade to make, only one, I'd buy gold. And I know that's not what you or your listeners want to hear, but it's because it's the only other tier one asset on the planet and the biggest money in the world knows it. However, with that being said, I believe that silver is the most undervalued asset on the planet and probably the best investment I've ever seen in my career. And if I had two trades to make, I would load up on silver with the intention of trading a good portion of it into gold when that ratio corrects. Playing that ratio game is something that I've done before successfully. In 2010, it was 85 to 1. It was the second time in human history it ever been that high. I told people, sell your gold right now and buy silver. And within 7 months, you had 37 to 1, just below its 200-year average of roughly 42 to 1. That was over a double with no risk in 7 months and no money outlaid. When you get stretched to these levels, you're talking, this has happened less than a fraction of a percent in all of human history. And we are in anomaly territory. And when I look at what's made me successful, amongst other things, at least in terms of trades over the years, it's been by identifying and exploiting price and economic anomalies. This is one of them. So I would say to people, you'd be smart to sell a good portion of your gold. Don't sell it all. You don't have to go all in, but sell a good portion of your gold, trade it into silver, ride that silver ratio back to just reaching its average of the last 100 years of 42 to 1. You're still 6 times higher than it's coming out of the ground at. And when you see these distortions and you see the amount of accumulation by the big money around the world, at some point that ratio, that mining ratio, has to come into focus. It has to, because the geologic numbers have to come into play. I don't think gold is undervalued. It's the dollar that's or gold is overvalued. It's the dollar that's overvalued, and I would simply say to you that you pull the Western suppression out of the price of gold and silver, it will go higher than anyone thinks possible. And I think ultimately that's what happens, is that you see the Shanghai exchange or some exchange like that in Dubai or Moscow or wherever it may be, or in coordination, these exchanges reprice gold and silver. Not only would it reliquefy their countries the way Roosevelt did in 33 and get their balance sheet in order, but they're the ones who produce it all, accumulate it all, and they obviously see the importance of it. So to revalue it, yeah, I think you could see that ratio massively swing in the other direction. Guys like Big Swears say it's going to go, single digit, and maybe even silver move ahead of gold in terms of that ratio. Now, that, as crazy as that sounds, look, it's coming out of the ground at 7 to 1, and it's disappearing in nature. It was 16 to 1 for a very long time. So if you can own an asset that's priced at 90 to 1, but is being produced at 7 to 1, I mean, that's 12 times, 13 times nearly um, undervalued. And so, yeah, it's one of these deals where I think you look at the asymmetrical proposition, you have very little downside in that and massive upside. So I think it's as good of an investment from every metric as I can find. And I would tell people, yes, trade your silver to gold, but when that ratio snaps back, give serious thought of trading some of your silver, not all of it, back into gold, increasing what you could otherwise have bought today or increasing what you started with. So the mistake a lot of people make is doing all or nothing. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but you should own some silver always. And you should also own some gold. I would not count it out as the asset that the BIS, the most sophisticated bank in the world, tells us is tier one. Next to US dollars and treasuries, that's the only other one. So yeah, it's significant. And I wouldn't count it out, but I wouldn't go all or nothing either.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I always recommend diversifying into both. I'm curious, you guys can comment down below as well, what you guys do or what you guys are buying right now as well, just to keep the conversation going. Is there any last words you wanted to say or mention anything?
Well, you know what? I just think, like I've said forever, people just need to trust their gut on all of this stuff and do your research like you do, like I do. Do your due diligence. Don't rely upon someone to tell you what to do with your money. You work too hard to accumulate it. And I think, look, the bottom line is that the deteriorating finances of our government and the consequences of our actions are and of our deteriorating reputation on the world stage are at some point is going to have some consequences. It's not lost on the rest of the world. And I think this is why you accumulate gold and silver. It is not to become wealthy. It is to protect yourself from what is coming. And if you do it that way and don't buy it with the expectations of selling it to become wealthy, but buying it to allow you to survive what is coming and maybe even thrive, I think it makes it a whole lot easier to handle these ups and these downs. And even as counterintuitive as they are, see it for what it is. It's desperation. It's a drive-by shooting. When the labor numbers come out and they slam the price of it, the labor numbers are a scam. The labor numbers for 2023 were revised by 440,000 jobs, or over 40% at the very beginning of 2024. Sorry, we were wrong last year. Well, you don't hear them talking about it. It was a little footnote, right? And so just like the labor numbers that come out in January, which are seasonally adjusted, they're all a bunch of crap too. So desperation, I think, buy on the dips. And look at it as wealth. I think it will be much easier to see the truth than to buy it with, hopes and or needs to for it to make you wealthy. That's not the way to own it. Shouldn't be done that way, and will make you then fall on the side of emotion rather than on logic.
Well, folks, I think we can wrap it up here. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Make sure you stay tuned. We are on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and we also have a playlist of all our past episodes we've done for over the last year if you guys wanted to check those out as well. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. This is Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.